Next on NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman.
Major debate about country of origin labeling in the 2007 Farm Bill. Plus, we'll take a look at how best to market your operation. And we'll hear from producers around the country about what the wild summer weather has been like.
And now, NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman with your host, Susie Ross.
Hello, I'm Susie Ross. Thanks for watching Cattleman to Cattleman. Asian export markets lead this week's cattle industry news. Exports to South Korea remain suspended due to a recent discovery of T-bones in a shipment of U.S. beef. This cut is eligible for export under international guidelines, but not currently approved for sale to Korea. NCBA is urging prompt resolution of this dispute because demand for U.S. beef in Korea has been very strong. Prior to suspension, exports to Korea had exceeded 4 million pounds per week. Meanwhile, Japan is considering expansion of U.S. exports to include beef from cattle up to 30 months of age. A decision could come by the end of this month. Currently, exports to Japan must be from cattle 20 months and younger. This makes it difficult for U.S. cattlemen to rebuild market share in Japan, which was once our #1 beef export market. From the cattleman's perspective, one of the most important issues in the 2007 Farm Bill is the country of origin labeling. The House version of the Farm Bill currently requires that cool become mandatory for cattlemen in 2008. It's expected that the Senate will approve a similar mandate, which is sparking a debate on cool on Capitol Hill.
Cattlemen's Capital Concerns, brought to you by Fort Dodge Animal Health, makers of Cydectin Poron and Triangle Vaccines.
So the agreement that has been reached now is still mandatory, which those who were advocating it insisted upon, but it has tremendous improvements for farmers. You have a reduction in the paperwork, a substantial reduction in the paperwork. You have a substantial reduction in the penalties that are faced if something is not correctly labeled, and you also have a lot more flexibility in how a product that a farmer, for example, in the United States who buys feeder cattle from Canada or Mexico has, they will be able to have a label that indicates that it is a product of both the United States and Canada, or United States and Mexico.
Well, I've been opposed to mandatory country of origin labeling from the beginning. I make a very strong case, as do others, that it's a marketing rather than a food safety issue. Compromise that's been worked out really went in depth to look at how this impacts the farmer and rancher. The last thing we want to do is increase the difficulty and especially the cost for them of getting their products to market. So what's happened here is under mandatory, it'll be mandatory, but there will be no requirements for any additional paperwork or proof of country of origin. You can use the documents that are already a part of your daily activities as proof for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
I believe in mandatory country of origin labeling. The big issue, though, is who bears the cost. I think in the end, we have to have the consumer bear the cost because really it's a food safety issue. In the long run, when you look at it, I think it will help producers as well, as long as they're not the ones that have to bear the cost of the labeling. I know that processors are opposing a mandatory cool. However, I think if we look at what happens to the ag community, when you look at what's happened when we have BSC meat come from Canada, it's affected our markets because Japan, at certain times has not been willing to take it. I think we reached a perfect agreement, and I think all the ag groups and ag organizations came together at the very last hour of the Farm Bill, and we worked out a compromise, and I think everybody's happy with it.
Labeling by itself doesn't provide health protection. I think American consumers certainly want to know where their food comes from, and that's understandable. But the fact is that health standards are maintained and protected and improved when you have a USDA inspector at a beef plant on a basis of checking for bacteria based on a protocol system, having thermometer gauges, as I've seen when I've gone into packing plants, checking the thermometer within the carcasses of the beef after it is being processed, and monitoring and having a tracking number for that beef as it goes through the processing plant into the grocery store. That's how you maintain and protect health standards. A country of origin label doesn't do that. It may make people feel better because they know where the food came from. However, when we talk about risk assessment versus risk management, I'm trying to get my colleagues here in Washington to understand that to get the best protection for the safety of our consumers, we need to keep focused as to where those dollars should be spent.
You know, I think the American consumer is increasingly interested in where the food they eat comes from. I think that's especially important in light of what's happened with China. You see these adulterated products coming in from China that have had real consequences for people. I mean, there have been actual deaths. I believe people are going to insist on being able to know where their food comes from, and that really is country of origin labeling, but it goes beyond that. I think people will insist on actually knowing, at some point, be able to know right to the farm gate where that critter comes from. And the key is not to do it in a way that's burdensome to the producer and overly costly for the system. The good news is technology is developing so rapidly that we're probably approaching the point where it can be done in a very cost competitive way, and that's going to be important as well.
I believe it will go into effect. I think the House did some things in the House bill which I think probably are reasonable in terms of record keeping and that type of thing, which I think are quite reasonable. But I think country of origin labeling has support, and I think it will go into effect a year from this September.
Country of origin labeling has been a very controversial issue that's been discussed every year I've been in Congress, now going on 13 years. This issue always comes up, and it's an issue that sounds like it ought to be easy to do, but in actuality it's pretty difficult. And there's no more difficult area from a country of origin label standpoint than the meat industry. We have so much breeding between animals across borders, in addition to the fact that we ship animals across borders. So there are a number of critical issues that are involved here. But I think we're going to come forward with a compromise that has been worked out by individuals in the meat industry. It's not going to be something that everybody's going to be happy with. But at the end of the day, I'm hopeful that we'll have a provision that can be implemented without too much cost, because very honestly, from a policymaker standpoint, and somebody who comes from the heart of ag country in my state, I know who's going to bear that cost, and that's been my hesitation on country of origin labeling. It's going to be our growers and it's going to be our producers at the farm gate that are going to pay for this. So we want to make sure that whatever we implement is not going to be something that really affects the bottom line of our folks involved in agriculture.
NCBA was able to gain several improvements to the law. Records will not be required on existing cattle. Paperwork will also be minimized. And CBA continues to fix other flaws in the law, including the exemption for poultry. Industry experts say this will create a price disparity at the meat case.
Chiefly, our main competitor, poultry or chicken, is excluded, and that does not create a level playing field for the beef industry or for the pork industry.
NCBA and Cattlemen to Cattlemen will continue to follow developments on COOL and the 2007 Farm Bill. Fall is right around the corner, so how will this summer's market conditions affect fall calf prices? We have more in this week's Market Watch.
Market Watch, brought to you by Pfizer Animal Health.
We're joined by Erica Rosa, economist with the Livestock Marketing Information Center. Welcome, Erica.
Thank you. Glad to be here today.
It's great to have you here. Listen, before we get started, we'd like to hear a little bit about you, your background, where you come from.
Sure. I'm originally from Northern California. I grew up in a farming and purebred Hereford cattle operation. I've done my graduate work at Purdue University and came directly out here to the LMIC in the summer of 2002 and been working on livestock forecasting analysis since.
Fantastic. Do you love Colorado?
I love it here. The skiing, the hiking, the outdoors, and the sun pretty much all year round. You can't beat it.
That's true. Northern California, kayak.
Yes.
Well, we're glad to have you here.
Great. Thank you for having me.
As we look at cow slaughter numbers and the latest calf crop estimates, it seems like we're headed for another year of pretty tight supplies. Do you share that outlook?
I agree completely. Looking at the total cow and heifer slaughter during the first half of the year, it was up 6% from a year ago. That combined with the USDA mid-year inventory report, which showed the total cattle inventory down 400,000 head, plus the beef cow inventory down 100,000 head. I mean, that clearly shows we're down in numbers. But more importantly, the number of heifers held for beef replacements going into this year was 6% below a year ago. Clearly indicates tight supplies in 2007 and going into 2008.
With summer going by so quickly, it's time to start thinking about fall calf prices. How do you expect the calf market to respond to these factors?
It's going to be very favorable. Given the inventory numbers, the tight supplies are going to be very supportive to calf prices. Seasonally, calf, light, and heavyweights will decline this fall compared to current levels. But in the fall, we're going to see calf and heavyweight prices above a year ago. In fact, at the LMIC, we're forecasting 5 to 6 weights, about between the 115 to 119 per hundredweight range, and the heavyweights in the 106 to 109 per hundredweight range as well. Very strong compared to a year ago. What's going to be a key factor going into the fall is corn prices, their impact on calf prices, as well as we're going to see continued demand from feedlots for the heavyweight calves based on feed grain and feedstuff prices being well above a year ago.
Looking north of the border, we've had a decline in Canadian beef imports this year. Is that because of short supplies up there, or is it due to other factors?
It's mainly due to short supplies. We've seen the Canadian cattle herd decline over the past couple of years. The January 1 report showed that the herd was down about 3.5%. Their July mid-year inventory is coming out here later this month, and we expect to see another decline year on year on cattle numbers. Now, they have sent more feeder and slaughter cattle down, given the border reopening. We've seen a slight increase in feeder cattle imports this year, but it's been small, and we've seen more live cattle coming down versus beef. They've had some other factors going on as well, including the exchange rate, which has been working against the industry this year.
Thanks, Erica. It's great to have you here.
Great. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, we'll look forward to having you back. You can get more information about LMIC by heading to our website at cattlemantocattleman.org. Next on NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman, we'll take a look at the importance of a value-added marketing program on your operation.
You've invested in the right genetics. You have a good herd health and nutrition program. Now it's time to sell your calves. You've used all the tools to get the greatest return on your investment. Or have you? If you're not preconditioning, you may be leaving some money on the table.
And we'll hear about the wild summer weather affecting different parts of the country.
We're going to have more feed than we've had in years, so that's a good situation.
But first, here's a look at this week's market summary provided by CattleFax.
I was just about to land on a fresh pile of manure when I was strangely attracted to this stuff on the wall. Quick Bait Spot Spray. That's good eating. Ooh, Quick Bait Fly Bait. I know it's gonna kill me, but I still love it.
Quick Bait Fly Bait and Spot Spray make a lethal combination to lure flies into certain death.
Purina's wind and rain minerals are research tested and field proven to provide balanced mineral nutrition essential for cattle health, growth, and reproduction. They're highly palatable so cattle consume what they need when they need it. And wind and rain mineral special formulation resists the elements so they won't blow out of the feeder and maintain their palatability even if they've been wet. Wind and rain cattle minerals from Purina Mills, building better cattle.
In 1874, an innovation changed the beef industry forever. It was called barbed wire, and it brought an end to open-range grazing and began a whole new era of cattle management. Today, there's another breakthrough innovation changing the beef industry. It's called Draxxin, and it's one more way Pfizer Animal Health is working with veterinarians and cattlemen to open up a whole new era in animal health. To learn more about Draxxin, talk to your veterinarian.
Welcome back to Cattleman to Cattleman. A value-added marketing program is an important addition to any operation. Cattleman to Cattleman's Jim Witt headed to Joplin, Missouri to learn more.
We're at Joplin Regional Stockyards, and I'm talking to Mark Harmon. Mark, we were visiting a little earlier, and you said that producers got to have a value-added marketing system to be successful.
I think that's probably true. A lot of folks just choose to sell their cattle, whenever they need funds or need financing. But if more people would look at getting in some kind of a value-added system, whether it be on the cattle they sell on a Monday or the cattle they sell through a marketing value-added system, it can enhance the price of their cattle a little bit. If you just do a little bit of work at home, that makes the next buyer of that calf more interested in it.
Preconditioning plays a big role in those value-added sales. Tell us about the preconditioning program that producers have to participate in.
It plays a huge role in our sales on Thursday, and those sales run from October till May. The calves need to be weaned 45 days. They need to have 2 rounds of shots. They need to be bump broke, tank broke. You can also sell those cattle with 1 round of shots right off the cow, because at least you've done a little bit of the work for the buyer. And then we keep those things segregated. We show all that information in the ring when we sell them, and it's an easy transition for the producer, because some people do have the ability to get them up, give them 1 round of shots, and catch them today and sell them off the cow. But for your other producers, they'll get them up, work them, wean them, put some weight on them, and they'll make their money off the cost of gain.
Mark, value-added marketing strategies aren't just for big producers, are they?
Oh no, these things are for everybody.
What are some of the options producers have?
There's just so many to pick from. You have your breed associations, you have your pharmaceutical companies, you have your state cattlemen's associations, and you have livestock auctions like this that present programs to the producers. So there's one to fit everyone. And it doesn't matter whether you're running. We do age and source program for people that got 10 cows, because they want to get their cattle in a marketing system of that nature. And we have guys that have 12 or 1,500 cows. So it doesn't matter what size you are. If you're dealing with a market facility that cares about what you're doing, they're going to help you find a way to enhance your product.
Well, and I guess that you have more and more cattle that come through your value-added sales, so the payback must be there.
I think so. You can get into a bad market anytime by accident, not planning. It's something that we generally can't control here at Joplin that causes it for it to be a bad market. But on any given day, the main thing with livestock is health is everything. I don't care how many tags he has in his ears, how well he's bred. If he doesn't live, he's not worth anything.
I'm in Northwest Missouri with Pete Metz and John Osborne, and they have a unique take on preconditioning. John, you exclusively buy preconditioned calves. Tell me why.
Yes, I do. I mainly buy preconditioned calves for the fact of the sickness. I don't like doctoring calves, and if you have them preconditioned, you seem to have a lot less problems.
Every time you doctor a calf, what do you figure that costs you?
It costs anywhere from $20 to $50 every time you run one through the chute.
So preconditioned calves pay their way here,
yes,
don't
they do.
And you buy those calves from Pete, or a lot of them, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Pete, tell me a little bit about how you started preconditioning your calves and why.
The reason I started was because the market dictated that if you're going to get top money out of your calves, that you're going to have them pre-vacced. So I started pre-vaccing probably 15 to 16 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So and since then I've started selling calves to John because they fit his program.
There's a lot of people that are out there listening to us and watching this, and they say, I don't know if I really want to spend the money to precondition calves. What would you say the bottom line benefit would be, Pete, from your perspective?
Well, from the perspective here at John's, because we're finishing all these cattle out and putting these cattle all on the grid, they say sick cattle won't make the grid. I mean, they don't grade choice. They grade more than select, and we have very few cattle that ever grade below choice. So I think the program is really working in that aspect.
You're both cow-calf producers, and you sell females to some of your neighbors, is that right?
Yes, it is.
And then what happens to those calves?
We sell the cows to the neighbors around, and then I've kind of got a contract that I get to buy the calves back if they're all preconditioned the way we want them.
So if they don't precondition according to your program, it's no deal, is that right?
Pretty well.
Okay. Pete, why don't you tell us specifically about your preconditioning process?
Approximately 3 weeks before we wean, I go in and give a modified live and also cross pastorella, blackleg, and somnus to these calves, and then are kicked back out for the cows for about 3 weeks. And in the last 2 years, we've changed over and started using modified live on the cows also, so we can also do this process without harming the next year's calf crop. Then in 3 weeks, the calves are weaned and I bring them to John.
Okay, John, tell us what you do with those calves when you get them in here at the lot.
Okay, the day the calves come in, we run them through the chute, give them all their booster shots, worm and pour them. Then we turn them out in the lot that's a fresh, clean lot with fresh water, and we hand feed the calves the first 3 or 4 days. We start them out the first day with hay, and then the next day we'll give them hay and grain to get them started, make sure everybody's eating well.
Now you're taking these cattle from conception to the packer. So what do you think the bottom line benefit of preconditioning these calves are to your program?
Well, the bottom line is you can get these calves sold for top of the market because he's going to keep coming back for more calves year after year if they don't get sick on him.
From a feeder's perspective, John, what's the bottom line benefit to you?
I think the bottom line for me is that if you get them preconditioned and you do it as soon as you've got them, they'll keep gaining and they won't back off feed at all, and you'll get a better gain all the way to market.
Okay. Pete, John, we appreciate you taking time to visit with us today. I'm with Steve Houston, who feeds cattle with John Osborne on a retained ownership program. Now, Steve, you're not only a cow-calf producer, but you're a banker. Can you give us a dollar figure on what preconditioning brings to a producer?
Probably the preconditioned cattle not only are benefit we're seeing through the sale barns and selling these cattle off the farm, but the economical benefit is the guys that purchase them or that retain them with limited cattle that get sick. That's dollars and cents to them, and you know, bottom line, where margins are tight anymore, so they're looking for every dollar that they can make on these cattle.
I'm with Dr. Doug Johnson, a veterinarian who works with both Pete Mitz and John Osborne. What do you tell a producer that says preconditioning just costs too much?
Yeah, you hear a lot of that, and in all honesty, most people don't put a pencil to it. They come in and they'll price a set of vaccinations for calves, and they'll say, oh, well, that's going to cost $9 to $10 a head, and they're worried about the $9 or $10. But what they're really not understanding is if they don't vaccinate those calves properly and get them on feed, that it will cost them a lot more than the $9 or $10 a head in gains that they won't receive, or in sick cattle when they start doctoring them. If they have to doctor one of those calves that they didn't vaccinate properly, and it costs them $20 to, we've heard $20 to $50, and that's not uncommon. It paid for several vaccinations for several head, at that price.
So preconditioning is a good return on their investment.
Preconditioning is probably the best return on investment they're going to have.
You can learn more about the Beef Quality Assurance Program by heading to the website bqa.org. We'll be right back.
Fort Dodge Animal Health knows your animals are an important part of your way of life. That's why we're committed to providing you with a complete family of livestock vaccines and pharmaceuticals to protect your investments, save you time, and ensure quality and safety in your operation. Your herd and your horses are important to you. That's why they're important to us. Fort Dodge Animal Health. For more information on our entire family of livestock products, visit us online.
From fresh tomatoes to potatoes and chicken to beef, we're as picky about our quality ingredients as you are. Because that's what we're made of.
Fall is just around the corner, and the cooler weather will be a relief to those who have battled a difficult summer. Here's a look at what some producers have faced this summer when it comes to wild weather.
We are extremely dry in our country, and in fact, one of our people today was pretty well burned out south of Twin Falls. The whole ranch, grass, everything's gone. Some lightning storms, so we are so dry. we're starting to see cattle going to market, cows and calves both, because there's no grass. So it's pretty serious right now.
It's been a real strange year. Some areas were really wet this spring, and then a corner of it's been the worst drought in 4 years. A lot of the state, though, looks pretty good, though.
Next week in the Cattle Learning Center, we'll learn more about managing BRD. Plus, we'll get a preview of this year's beef cook-off. And as always, we'll have a look at the week's news and market headlines. Thanks for joining us on NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman. Be sure to tune in next week. A new episode airs every Tuesday night at 8:30 Eastern Time, right here on RFD TV.